Welcome to the Traveling Professors. I'm Professor Bob.
And I'm Professor Sheri.
And together we are
the Traveling Professors.
Today we're going to begin a three-part series on the Temple of Karnak because it is huge. When we did our temple tour of Luxor, it was 4 acres. The tour of the Karnak complex is 247 acres. So this part 1 show will be through the main axis that goes east to west, which includes the largest temple ever built. The second one will deal with the southern section, which goes to the Temple of Mut. And the third show will deal with what it is like to come out and take the sound and light show at night, because that's when the temple really comes alive. So Sheri and I hope you enjoy this. The aerial photograph of the Karnak facility, as I said before, 247 acres, gives an idea of its complexity. You see the main axis, which runs east to west with the great pylon in the front that goes to the back. You see the sacred lake. Behind the sacred lake is areas where you sit when you watch the sound and light show. Then the area that goes off to the south, that is the extension or the axis that goes to the Temple of Mut. Now you have to remember that this temple has been in place since 2000 BC and has been added on all the way up to 51 BC. The last addition was by one of the Ptolemies, Ptolemy Eleates. This was also, from the Middle Kingdom on, considered the national shrine of all of Egypt, which is why it was honored so much and why everybody tried to add something to it. And it honors the Theban triad, that is Amun, the father, Mut, the mother, and Khonsu, the moon god, who is the sun. The Temple of Karnak is so incredibly complicated that I hope that this chart will help us as we go through it. It's a little easier to kind of get an overview, because even though I had studied this and I'd talked with my wife before we went, after we got through the first court, it was hard to figure out where we were, even though we had a guidebook and everything else. So this will help, and I'll go back to this periodically as we go through the actual sites. So this shows in color the construction of the different aspects of it. Now, the Middle Kingdom, which is 2022 to 1784, that is the part of the temple that is right here, this yellowish color. A pylon, third pylon, and the center court of the temple. Then you get to the intermediate period. That's why you see there aren't any numbers from 1783 until 1493, because that is the second intermediate period. Now you get to the 18th dynasty. The 18th dynasty is going to build the center section of the temples, pylons 4, 5, and 6. They're going to put obelisks in, and they're going to do the southern extension. And then we'll add pylons 7, 8, 9, and 10. So here you have what Thutmose the first added, the nice blue section in here, extensive. Then you have Hatshepsut, the woman pharaoh. She is an obelisk person, so she has put these obelisks in place. Then we have the gigantic construction of Thutmose III, the great conqueror in the New Kingdom. And so he adds this whole section around the temple that's in place and then begins that extension off to the south. And then we end up with 19th dynasty, and they add the hypostyle hall and the pylon number 2. So here you see pylon number 2 added by Horemheb, who follows after King Tut. Then we get to the 20th dynasty, and the 20th dynasty, we're going to have, the temple was pretty much considered complete at that particular time. So Ramses III simply built a little side temple to Ammon. And so you can see here's Ramses' temple. And then the rest of it is added in other time periods. You have the Libyan pharaohs, which is dynasty 22, and they're going to add the court of the Babosites, which is named after one of their capitals. And then you have the additions there, another little hypostyle section which is added by the Ethiopians, and then you have the final addition, which is the exterior, which is pylon number 1, and some of the fortifications, which are of course added by Nectibo I and Talos. And then you have chapels and other things that are added by the later kings. So in reality, this temple starts in the middle and works its way the other direction. A lot of people get confused because you come in pylon number 1 and you assume that's the oldest and you're working your way back. And in reality, they add a little thing and then expand it and then expand it and then expand it. So I hope that helps. We'll see this again as we go through the different sections. After buying your ticket, you walk into the site, and they have a building that has this exquisite model of the whole area. So here's the angle that we're going to be seeing first. This is the coming down an avenue of sphinxes into the main temple. After we finish there, we'll go to the south annex, and that is what this looks like with the model, because you can see the sacred lake in that one area. And then here is the Temple of Mut off to the side. So it's quite extensive. So we walk outside. Now it's early in the morning. We got there just about the time that it opened. So we have a little bit of trouble with raw. It's a little bit bright in front of us, so it's going to make our early pictures look a little different. But again, once you go to these different sites at different times, you'll see how they turn out. Here's an example. If you were to come in around 1 o'clock in the afternoon and you get the pictures. But you have the Avenue of Sphinxes, which are actually ram's heads. Now, the Avenue of Sphinxes between Luxor and Karnak actually connect with the Temple of Mut, and there's 1,300 of them that were in place at one time. And so we have some more here. So we're heading towards the main gate, which is pylon number 1, which was the last major construction. And then when you walk through pylon number 1, here is an aerial view of what we're going to be looking at. Here is the forecourt. Now, the forecourt is known as the Court of the Babastis, which was built by Libyan pharaohs because their capital was at Babatus, which was in the eastern Nile Delta. It is 326 by 338 feet. It has 93,000 square feet of footage. You can see the columns on either side. That's the columns of Tarak. One in the middle that still survives of a hypostyle hall series of columns from the same man. And then you have the Temple of Ramses III, and then you have the Shrine of Seti II, which is actually the boat shrine or bark shrines to the Triad here at Karnak. Let me give you a brief 360-degree shot of this courtyard. We've just walked in. Here we are walking in from the main front pylon number 1. And to my left, there's the bark shrine of Seti, and then you come to the columns of the Bastides and Tarak. Then you have a centering area, and there you see one of the surviving pillars, but you see the foundations of the others, and then behind it is the hypostyle hall. Going off to the right is another section of columns. You'll see the entrance to Ramses III's temple, some more of the columns, and then here we have the back pylon number 1. There we are looking back where we started. So now let's go and look at each of these little sections a little more in detail. This chart shows the entire Grand Temple of Amun-Ra. And to give you an idea, the whole thing is 1,220 feet long and 330 feet wide. You could put St. Peter's in Rome, Milan's Cathedral, and Notre Dame in this space and still have room left over. But we're just going to go down here to the temple, the bark temple of Seti II. Seti II's bark shrines for all 3 of the main gods of this temple. So you have 3 entryways, 3 locations where you would put the sacred boats, and obviously the big one in the middle is for Amun. So Mut's the first one, the one on the left. We walk in here. This would have had the boat in here. They would have had statues. Here's one of the reliefs on the wall. Remember, everything would have been painted. When we come out of that, we go to the middle one. The middle one is to Amun, and there would have been 3 statues in there to the whole triad, as well as one of the barks. You could spend days just looking at all the artwork on the walls. And then coming to the last one, this is Hansu, and it's the moon god. And here is an area over the doorway where you can still see some of the painting. If you'll look up, you can frequently see really beautiful artwork that still has its colors on it. And so that is the shrine of Seti II to the Triad of Karnak. Next, it's time to explore the pillars of the Babusid columns. So here's where they're located. They're actually on both sides of the courtyard. And so here we have one section of them, and they all would have had as you can see, the ram's head sphinxes. And then these are those that are on the other side. And we were the only people there, so the guard took us around to the back side so we could take some pictures. And then he took a picture of the 2 of us standing by the columns. And yes, a little tip was given out. Now we will enter the temple of Ramses III, dedicated to Amun. It is 170 feet long. As you enter the front of it, it has 2 sandstone statues of Ramses. And when you get to the inner courtyard, that would have had a roofed gallery, and the figures that are on the columns are all of Osiris. As you get back into the temple itself, here is one of the carvings showing the offering that Ramses III is making to Amun. And you can wander around in there a little bit and take some more pictures of the various stages of Ramses III's life. And then when you turn around, here's the view coming out of his temple, heading to the exit, and you see that giant column. Now that is the last pillar that survives of the colonnade of Tahak, the Ethiopian king of the 25th dynasty. And then when you get outside, there is the full size of it. And now it's time to go to the hypostyle hall. The hypostyle hall was built by Seti I and Ramses II during the period 1294 to 1213. Now, it is the largest single chamber of any temple in the world, 54,000 square feet, 134 columns. The 12 in the center are 69 feet high and 11 3/4 feet in diameter. They represent blooming papyrus, and they are 33 feet in circumference. Now, in 1890, an earthquake toppled 16 of the columns, but they were rebuilt. Here we go, heading into the hypostyle hall, coming in from the main courtyard. Not all of the columns are blooming, only the ones that are right in the middle. So as you come in, you see this opening, and wait till you see what it looks like at night when it's lit up. And then here you see a group being guided. Now the guide there said that according to his knowledge, that you supposedly could put 100 people, and they could stand on top of one of the open flower tops, one of the blooming papyrus. And then, of course, you just start walking through the columns, and you can see all sorts of, they're just magnificent. And then you reach the section where you see they're just buds. They haven't opened up. And if you look very closely between them, you can see the full color hieroglyphics on the underside, or at least of the parts that hold the ceiling up. And then it's just a process of kind of wandering around, looking at the different construction. Now, I had done a series on the Sea Peoples, and one of the things about this temple is on the back walls, they have some of the reliefs from the time period of Seti I and Ramses II, and they show some of their victories over their enemies. And some of the earliest representations of the battles are on those back walls, along with, I might add, scenes of handing out gifts to the gods and other things. But you could just wander all day through this hypostyle hall. There we are. We've got to turn around and go back to continue on, and then you end up going by one of the statues of Seti. And then we're going to head out into where the obelisks are located next. After leaving the hypostyle hall and then going through the pylon number 3, we head through pylon number 4 to see the obelisks of Hatshepsut, and then we are heading into the sanctuary of the Middle Kingdom, which is very dark, as we're planning on going through to the other side to the next courtyard, which would be the courtyard of the shrine of Thutmose III. As we exit the third pylon, we see in front of us our next goal. There's the various obelisks, and the dark area is the entrance into the shrine of the Middle Kingdom. So as we head closer, there's Hatshepsut's obelisk, which was built between the 4th and the 5th pylon. It is 97 feet high. Now we will go down the corridor here, heading towards the little arched region. On either side of us, there's a series of columns and more temples. Then we get through the little arch and head into the Temple of the Middle Kingdom. As you can see, it's pretty crowded. Then once through there, here is the courtyard. Now this would have had columns, but right now it's basically just a main courtyard. This is the festival temple of Thutmose III, which was built in 1450 BC. It is 144 feet by 53 feet. And as you get close to it, it is a rare style. It's basilica-like. It has 2 rows with 10 columns acting like a set of tent poles supporting the central area of the temple. And it is the House of the Million Years, or Ak Manu. It's one of the most splendid monuments devoted to the cult of the pharaoh rather than to Amun. And you have various work going on. You see the different columns, and then on the interior you can see the columns that hold up the ceiling. And look at all of the hieroglyphic work that is still easily seen in beautiful colors. And then you see a scene on the wall in beautiful color of Thutmose giving an offering. At this point, it's time to turn around. And so we're going to head back. So here's the view as we leave the Temple of Thutmose III, his festival temple. And we go back through the Temple of the Middle Kingdom, and we go back into the center area where the obelisks were. Now you can see the hypostyle hall directly ahead of us. But what we are going to do is we are going to go off to the side. We are heading for the Temple of Mut. So from our chart, we would head off this direction. And then using the model that we had seen at the beginning of this particular series, you see where we came in, and now here's where we're going. We're going to go through these pylons and then walk off to the side to go to the Temple of Mut. But that is part 2 of our trip through the Temple of Karnak. I would point out this. It is really important, if you've never been here before, to go and see the Temple of Karnak before you go and see the Sound and Light show. Because the Sound and Light show is, I thought it would be, they would just simply turn everything on, you'd walk through, and then they would do some special stuff. They turn bits and pieces on as you walk through. The whole site is not lit up simultaneously. And it really helps to have been there in the morning or in the afternoon before, or a couple of days before you go to the Sound and Light show. It makes it easier to understand. So I hope you enjoyed this section, part 1 of the tour of the Temple of Karnak. Sheri and I hope you enjoyed the tour. Please come by our YouTube channel at Bob Packett on YouTube. It should be History According to Bob, but it comes up as Bob Packett. That's the easiest way to get to it. And please subscribe and leave some comments. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, give a comment, and if you like history, please come by historyaccordingtobob.com website where I do 6 podcasts a week on different topics in history, and there's all sorts of CDs and other things that you can see. So thank you very much.